In the beginning, or how I learned to love the ceiling fan. Wait a minute. Wrong book. Shit. This is Corey Taylor's Seven Deadly Sins. This is not The Shining. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. Alright. I think this is the right book. I'm not quite sure. Chapter 17. The Doctor's Office. Stripped down to his underpants, lying on the examination table, Danny Torrance looked very small. He was looking up at Dr. Just Call Me Bill Edmonds, who was wheeling a large black machine up beside him. Danny rolled his eyes to get a better look. "Don't let it scare you, guy," Bill Edmonds said. I don't even know this word. It's an electroencephalograph, and it doesn't hurt. We call it EEG for short. "I'm going to hook you up to a bunch of wires to your head. No, not stick them in, only tape them. And pins in this part of the gadget will record your brain waves. Like on the $6 Million Man? About the same. Would you like to be like Steve Austin when you grow up?" "No way," Danny said as the nurse began to tape the wires to a number of tiny shaved spots on his scalp. "My daddy says that someday he'll get a short circuit, and then he'll be up the creek." "I know that creek well," Dr. Edmonds said amiably. "I've been up it a few times myself, sans paddle. An EEG will tell us lots of things, Danny." "Like what?" "Like, for instance, if you have epilepsy." Hold on. I hate that so much. Yeah, well, learn to love it. That's a little problem where, yeah, I know what epilepsy is. Really? Sure, there was a kid in my nursery school back in Vermont. I went to nursery school when I was a little kid, and he had it. He wasn't supposed to use the flashboard. "What was that, Dan?" He had turned on the machine. Thin lines began to trace their way across graph paper. It had all these lights, all different colors, and when you turned it on, some colors would flash, but not all. uh, okay, yeah, the page does give me chills, okay? It's like, I don't know, it just gives you a feeling on the tip of your fingers where it's hard for me to concentrate after I get that feeling. And you had to count the colors, and if you pushed the right button, you could turn it off. Brent couldn't use that. That's because bright flashing lights sometimes cause an epileptic seizure. You mean using the flashboard might have made Brent pitch a fit? Edmonds and the nurse exchanged a brief, amused glance. Inelegantly but accurately put, Danny. "What?" "I said you're right, except you should say seizure instead of pitch a fit. That's not nice." "Okay, just lie as still as a mouse now." "Okay. Danny, when you have these, whatever they are, do you ever recall seeing bright flashing lights before?" "No." Funny noises, ringing, or chimes like a doorbell?" "Uh-uh. How about a funny smell, maybe like oranges or sawdust, or a smell like something rotten?" "No, sir. Sometimes do you feel like crying before you pass out, even though you don't feel sad?" No way. That's fine then. Have I got epilepsy, Dr. Bill? I don't think so, Danny. Just lie still. Almost done. The machine hummed and scratched for another 5 minutes, and Dr. Edmonds shut it off. All done, Guy, Edmonds said briskly. Let's get those electrodes off you and then come into the next room. I want to have a little talk with you, okay? Sure. Sally, you go ahead and give him a time test before he comes in. All right. Edmonds ripped off the long curl of paper the machine had intruded and went into the next room, looking at it. Shit, almost dropped it. Almost cut myself with the book. I'm going to prick your arm just a little, the nurse said after Danny pulled up his pants. It's to make sure you don't have TB. They gave me that at my school just last year, Danny said without much hope. But that was a long time ago, and you're a big boy now, right? I guess so. Danny sighed and offered his arm up for sacrifice. When he had his shirt and shoes on, he went through the sliding door and into Dr. Edmonds' office. Edmonds was sitting on the edge of his desk, Wex swinging his legs thoughtfully. Hi, Danny. Hi. Hi. How's that hand now? He pointed at Danny's left hand, which was slightly bandaged. So popular. I'm just so popular. There's just so many questions. Alright, pretty good. Good. I looked at your EEG and it seems fine. But I'm gonna have to send it to a friend of mine in Denver who makes his living reading those things. I just want to make sure. Yes, sir. Tell me about Tony, Dan. We're about to hear about Tony in a second. Hold on. Somebody will. Danny shuffled his feet. He's just an invisible friend, he said. I made him up to keep me company. Edmonds laughed and he put his hands on Danny's shoulders. Now that's what your mom and dad say, but this is just between us, Guy. I'm your doctor. Tell me the truth and I'll promise not to tell them unless you say I can.
You got a phone?
I sure do.
Okay, Neil's coming to get me my pantry.
Okay.
Okay.
Alright. Uh-huh. Now I'm all caught off. Where was I? Okay. Okay. Danny thought about it. He looked at Edmonds, and then with a small effort of concentration, he tried to catch Edmonds' thoughts or at least the color of his mood. And suddenly he got an oddly comforting image in his head. file cabinets, their doors sliding shut one after another, locking with a click. Written on the small tabs in the center of each door was A through C, secret, D through G, secret, and so on. This made Danny feel a little easier. Cautiously, he said, "I don't know who Tony is. Is he your age?" "No, he's at least 11. I think he might be older. I've never seen him right up close. He might be old enough to drive a car." "You just see him at a distance, huh?" "Yes, sir." "And he always comes just before you pass out?" "Well, I don't pass out. It's like I go with him, and he shows me things." "What kind of things?" "Well..." Danny debated for a moment and then told Edmonds about Daddy's truck with all his writing in it, and about how the movers hadn't lost it before, between Vermont and Colorado after all. It was right under the stairs all along. "And your daddy found it where Tony said he would?" "Oh yes, sir, only Tony didn't tell me, he showed me." "I understand, Danny. What did Tony show you last night, when you locked yourself in the bathroom?" "I don't remember," Danny said quickly. "Are you sure?" "Yes, sir. A moment ago I said you locked the bathroom door, but that wasn't right, was it? Tony locked the door." "No, sir. Tony couldn't lock the door because he isn't real. He wanted me to do it, so I did. I locked it." "Does Tony always show you where the lost things are?" "No, sir. Sometimes he shows me things that are going to happen." "Really?" "Sure. Like one time Tony showed me the amusements and wild animal park in Great Barrington. Tony said Daddy was going to take me there for my birthday. He did, too." "What else does he show you?" Danny frowned. "Signs. He's always showing me stupid old signs. I can't read them, hardly ever. Why do you suppose Tony would do that, Tanny?" "I don't know." Danny brightened. "But Mommy and Daddy are teaching me how to read, and I'm trying really hard." So you can read Tony's signs. Well, I really want to learn, but that too, yeah. Do you like Tony, Danny?" Danny looked at the tile floor and said nothing. "Danny?" "It's hard to tell," Danny said. I used to hope he'd come every day, because he always showed me good things, especially since Mommy and Daddy don't think about divorce anymore." Dr. Edmonds' gaze sharpened, but Danny didn't notice. He was looking hard at the floor, concentrating on expressing himself. But that... But now, whenever he comes, he shows me bad things. Awful things. Like in the bathroom last night. The things he shows me, they sting like those wasps stung me. Only Tony's things sting me up here. He cocked a finger gravely at his temple. A small boy unconsciously burlesquing suicide. "What things, Danny?" "I can't remember," Danny cried out, agonized. "I tell you, if I could, it's like I can't remember, because it's so bad I don't want to remember. All I can remember when I wake up is red drum." "Red drum or red rum?" "Rum." "What's that, Danny?" "I don't know." "Danny." "Yes, sir." "Can you make Tony come now?" "I don't know. He doesn't always come. I don't even know if I want him to come anymore." "Try, Danny. I'll be right here." Danny looked at Edmonds doubtfully. Edmonds nodded encouragement. Danny let out a long sighing breath and nodded. "But I don't know if it'll work. I never did it with anyone looking at me before. And Danny doesn't always come anyway." "If he doesn't, he doesn't," Edmonds said. "I just want you to try." "Okay." He dropped his gaze to Edmund's slowly swinging loafers and cast his mind outward toward his Mommy and Daddy. They were here someplace. Right beyond that wall with the picture on it, as a matter of fact, in the waiting room where they had come in, sitting side by side but not talking, leafing through magazines, worried, about him. He concentrated harder, his brow furrowing, trying to get into the feeling of his mommy's thoughts. They were always harder when they weren't right there in the room with him. Then he began to get it. Mommy was thinking about his sister. Her sister. The sister was dead. Her mommy was thinking that the main thing that turned her mommy into such a bitch, into such an old biddy, because her sister had died. As a little girl, she was hit by a car. Oh God, I could never stand anything like that again. Like Aline. What if he's really sick, cancer, spinal meningitis, leukemia, brain tumor, like John Gunther's son, or muscular dystrophy? Oh geez, kids these days get leukemia all the time. Radium treatment, chemotherapy, we couldn't afford anything like that, but of course they can't just turn you out to die on the street, can they? And anyway, he's alright. Alright, you really shouldn't let yourself think, Danny, about Aileen and Danny, that car, Danny. But Tony wasn't there, only his voice. And as it faded, Danny followed him down into the darkness, falling and tumbling down some magic hole between Dr. Bill's swinging loafers. Past a loud knocking sound. Further, a bathtub cruised silently by in the darkness with some horrible thing lolling in it. Past a sound like sweet chiming church bells, past a clock under a dome of glass. So much foreshadowing going on here. Then the dark was pierced feebly by a single light, festooned with cobwebs. The weak glow disclosed a stone floor that looked damp and unpleasant. Somewhere, not far distant, was a steady mechanical roaring sound, but muted, not frightening. Sporadic. It was the thing that would be forgotten, Danny thought with dreamy surprise. Give me just a second. Hello. As his eyes adjusted to the gloom, he could see Tony just ahead of him, a silhouette. Tony was looking at something, and Danny strained his eyes to see what it was. Your daddy. See your daddy? Of course he did. How could he have missed him even in the basement light's feeble glow? Daddy was kneeling on the floor, casting the beam of a flashlight over old cardboard boxes and wooden crates. The cardboard boxes were mushy and old. Some of them had split open and spilled drifts of paper onto the floor. Newspapers, books, printed pieces of paper that looked like bills. His daddy was examining them with great interest, and then Daddy looked up and shone his flashlight in another direction. Its beam of light impaled another book, a large white one bound with gold string. The cover looked like white leather. It was a scrapbook. Danny suddenly needed to cry out to his daddy to tell him to leave that book alone, that some books should not be opened. But his daddy was climbing toward it. The mechanical roaring sound, which he now recognized as the boiler at the Overlook, which Daddy checked 3 or 4 times every day, had developed an ominous rhythmic hitching. It began to sound like pounding. And then the smell of mildew and wet rotting paper was changing to something else. The high junipery smell of the bad stuff. It hung around his daddy like a vapor as he reached out for the book and grasped it. Oh, Jesus. Alright. Tony was somewhere in the darkness. This inhuman place makes human monsters. This inhuman place, repeating the same incomprehensible thing over and over, makes human monsters. Falling through darkness again, now accompanied by the heavy pounding thunder, there was no longer the boiler, but the sound of a whistling mallet striking silk-papered walls, knocking out whiffs of plaster dust. Crouching helplessly on the blue-black woven jungle rug. Come out! this inhuman place, and take your medicine. Makes human monsters. With a gasp that echoed in his own head, he jerked himself out of the darkness. Hands were on him, and at first he shrank back, thinking that the dark thing in the overlook of Tony's world had somehow followed him back into the world of real things. And then Dr. Edmonds was saying, "You're all right, Danny. You're all right. Everything is fine." Danny recognized the doctor, then his surroundings in the office. He began to shudder helplessly. Edmonds held it. Excuse me. When the reaction began to subside, Edmonds asked, "You said something about monsters, Danny. What is it?" "This inhuman place," he said gutturally. "Tony told me this inhuman place makes... He shook his head. "Can't remember." "Try." "I can't." "Did Tony come?" "Yes." "What did he show you?" "Dark pounding. I don't remember." "Where were you?" "Leave me alone! I don't remember! Leave me alone!" He began to sob helplessly in fear and frustration. It was all gone, dissolved into a sticky mass like a wet bundle of paper, memory unreadable. Oh! Edmonds went to the water cooler and got him a paper cup of water. Danny drank it, and Edmonds got him another one. "Better?" "Yes." "Danny, I don't want to tease you about this, I mean. But can you remember anything before Tony came?" "My mommy," Danny said slowly. "She's worried about me." "Mothers always are, Guy." "No. She had a sister that died when she was a little girl, Aileen. She was thinking about how Aileen got hit by a car, and that made her worried about me. I don't remember anything else." "Oh, my shoulder. Oh, God. All right. Come on, play through the pain. Play through the pain." Edmonds was looking at him sharply. "Just now she was thinking that, out in the waiting room?" "Yes, sir." "Danny, how would you know that?" "I don't know," Danny said wanly. "The shining, I guess." "The what?" Danny shook his head very slowly. "I'm awful tired. Can I go see my mommy and daddy?" "I don't want to answer any more questions. I'm tired. My stomach hurts." "Are you going to throw up?" "No, sir. I just want to see my mommy and daddy." "Okay, Dan," Edmund said. "You go on out there and see them for a minute, and then send them in so I can talk to them, okay?" "Yes, sir." "There are books out there to look at. You like books, don't you?" "Yes, sir," Danny said dutifully. "You're a good boy." "You're a good boy, Danny." Danny gave him a faint smile. "I can't find a thing wrong with him," Dr. Edmonds said to the Torrances. "Not physically. Mentally he's bright and rather too imaginative." "Alright, first of all, how can you be too imaginative? Seriously. Children have to grow into their imagination like a pair of oversized shoes. Danny's is still way too big for him. Ever had his IQ tested?" "I don't believe in them," Jack said. "They straitjacket the expectations of both parents and teachers." Dr. Edmonds nodded. "All right. That might be. But if you did test him, I would think you'd find he's right off the scale for his age group. His verbal ability, for a boy who was 5 going on 6, is amazing." "We don't talk down to him," Jack said with a trace of pride. I doubt if you've ever had to in order to make yourself understood." Edmonds paused, fiddling with a pen. "He went into a trance while I was with him, at my request, exactly as you described in the bathroom last night. All his muscles went lax, his body slumped, and his eyeballs rotated outward. Textbook auto-hypnosis. I was amazed. I still am." Ugh. The Torrances sat forward. What happened? Wendy asked tensely, and Edmonds carefully related Danny's trance. The muttered phrase from which Edmonds had only been able to pluck the word monsters, the dark, the pounding. The aftermath of tears, near hysteria, and nervous stomach. Tony again, Jack said. What does it mean? Wendy asked. Have you any idea? A few. You might not like them. Go ahead anyway, Jack told him. From what Danny told me, his invisible friend was truly a friend until you folks moved out here from New England. Tony has only become a threatening figure since that move. The pleasant interludes have become nightmarish, even more frightening to your son, because he can't remember exactly what the nightmares are about. That's common enough. We all remember our pleasant dreams more clearly than the scary ones. There seems to be a buffer somewhere between the conscious and the subconscious, and one hell of a blue nose lives in there. This sensor only lets through a small amount, and often what does come through is only symbolic. That's oversimplified Freud, but it does pretty much describe what we know of the mind's interaction with itself. You think moving has upset Danny that badly? Ugh. My shoulder. It's not my neck now, it's my shoulder. My ribs, my shoulder. You think moving has upset Danny that badly? Wendy asked. It may have if the move took place under traumatic circumstances, Edmund asked. Did it? Wendy and Jack exchanged a glance. How long is this chapter? Fucking Christ. 4. So it's this page. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 more pages. Yay! I was teaching at a prep school, Jack said slowly. I lost my job. I see, Edmund said. Oh. He put the pen he had been playing with firmly back in its holder. There's more here, I'm afraid. It may be painful to you. Your son seems to believe you two have seriously contemplated divorce. He spoke of it in an offhand way, but only because he believes you're no longer considering it. Jack's mouth dropped open, and Wendy recoiled as if slapped. The blood drained from her face. We never discussed it, she said, not in front of him, not even in front of each other. I think it's best if you understand everything, Doctor, Jack said. Shortly after Danny was born, I became an alcoholic. I'd had a drinking problem all the way through college. It subsided a little after Wendy and I met, and cropped up worse than ever after Danny was born, and the writing I considered to be my real work was going badly. When Danny was 3.5, he spilled some beer on a bunch of papers I was working on. Papers I was shuffling around anyway, well, oh shit. His voice broke, but his eyes remained dry and unflinching. It sounds so goddamn beastly, said aloud. I broke his arm turning him around to spank him. 3 months later I gave up drinking. I haven't touched it since. I see, Edmund said neutrally. I knew the arm had been broken, of course. It was set well. He pushed back from his desk a little and crossed his legs. If I may be frank, it's obvious that he's been in no way abused since then. Other than the stings, there's nothing on him but the normal bruises and scabs that any kid has in abundance. Of course not, Wendy said hotly. Jack didn't mean... No, Wendy, Jack said. I meant to do it. I guess someplace inside I really did mean to do that to him, or something even worse. He looked back at Edmonds. You know something, Doctor? This is the first time the word divorce has been mentioned between us, and alcoholism and child beating. Three firsts in 5 minutes. That may be the root of the problem, Edmund said. I'm not a psychiatrist. If you want Danny to see a child psychiatrist, I can recommend a good one who works out of the Mission Ridge Medical Center in Boulder, but I'm fairly confident in my diagnosis. Danny is an intelligent, imaginative, receptive boy. I don't believe he would have been as upset by your marital problems as you believed. Small children are great acceptors. They don't understand shame or the need to hide things. It's cold in here. I would turn on the heater, but it's quite loud. Or, I'm just cold-natured, I guess. Or actually warm-natured, because I get cold. I have bad circulation, I get cold. Okay? Jack was studying his hands. Wendy took one of them and squeezed it. But he sensed the things that were wrong. Chief among them, from his point of view, was not the broken arm, but the broken or breaking link between you two. He mentioned divorce to me, but not the broken arm. When my nurse mentioned the set to him, he simply shrugged it off. It was a no-pressure thing. It happened a long time ago, is what I think he said. That kid, Jack muttered. His jaws were clamped together, the muscles in the cheeks standing out. We don't deserve him. You have him all the same, Edmund said dryly. At any rate, he retires into a fantasy world from time to time. Nothing unusual about that. Lots of kids do. As I recall, I had my own invisible friend when I was Danny's age. A talking rooster named Chub Chub. What? Okay. I'm really hoping this is relevant before I read on. I forget whether it's relevant or not. But... And of course no one could see Chub Chub but me. I had two older brothers who often left me behind, and in such a situation Chub Chub might came in mighty handy. And of course, you two must understand why Danny's invisible friend is named Tony instead of Mike or Hal or Dutch. Yes, Wendy said. Have you ever pointed it out to him? No, Jack said. Should we? Why bother? Let him realize it in his old time, by his own logic. You see, Danny's fantasies were considerably deeper than those that go around the ordinary invisible friend syndrome. But he felt he needed Tony that much more. Tony would always come and show him pleasant things, sometimes amazing things, always good things. Once, Tony showed him where Daddy's lost trunk was, under the stairs. Another time, Tony showed him that Mommy and Daddy were going to take him to an amusement park for his birthday. At Great Barrington, Wendy cried. But how could he... What? But how could he know those things? It's eerie, the things he comes out with sometimes. Almost as if he had a second sight. Edmund's asked, smiling. He was born with a caul, like a mask over his face. A caul is when a loose part of the skin covers the face. Like a mask. A caul is a mask of skin. Edmund's smile became a good hearty laugh. Jack and Wendy exchanged a glance and then also smiled, both of them amazed at how easy it was. Danny's occasional lucky guesses about things was something else that they had not discussed much. Next you'll tell me he can levitate, Edmund said, still smiling. No, I'm afraid not. It's not extrasensory, but good old human perception, which in Danny's case is unusually keen. Mr. Torrance, he knew your trunk was under the stairs because you had looked everywhere else. Process of elimination, what? It's so simple Ellery Queen would laugh at it. Sooner or later you would have thought of it yourself. As for the amusement park at Great Barrington, whose idea was that originally, yours or his? His, of course, Wendy said. They advertised on all the morning children's programs. He was wild to go. But the thing is, Doctor, we couldn't afford to take him, and we had told him so. Then a men's magazine I'd sold a story to back in 1971 sent a check for $50. Excuse me. Send a check for $50, Jack said. They were reprinting the story in an annual or something, so we decided to spend it on Danny. Alright. Oh, this is going to be a long book. Long-ass book. Edmund shrugged. Wish fulfillment plus the lucky coincidence. God damn it, I bet that's just right, Jack said. Edmund smiled a little, and Danny himself told me that Tony often shows him things that never occur. Well, I gotta hurry up, because my computer's about to die. This chapter might be in parts. Edmund smiled a little, and Danny himself told me that Tony often showed him things that never occurred. Visions based on faulty perception, that's all. Danny is doing subconsciously what these so-called mystics and mind readers do quite consciously and cynically. I admire him for it. If life doesn't cause him to attract his antenna, I think he'll be quite a man. Wendy nodded. Of course she thought Danny would be quite a man. But the doctor's explanation struck her as glib. It tasted more like margarine than butter. Edmonds had not lived with them. He had not been there when Danny found lost buttons, told them that maybe the TV guide was under the bed, that he thought he'd better wear his rubbers to nursery school even though the sun was out. And later that day they had walked home under her umbrella through the pouring rain. Edmonds couldn't know of the curious way Danny had of pre-guessing them both. She would decide to have an unusual evening cup of tea, go out in the kitchen and find her cup out with a tea bag in it. She would remember that the books were due at the library and find them all neatly piled on the hall table, her library card on top. Or Jack would take it into his head to wax the Volkswagen and find Danny already out there listening to tinny top 40 music on his crystal radio as he sat on the curb to watch. Ouch. You get to reading and sitting for a long time and you get uncomfortable with your position. Aloud, she said, then why the nightmares now? Why did Tony tell him to lock the bathroom door? I believe it's because Tony has outlived his usefulness, Edmund said. He was born, Tony, not Danny, at a time when you and your husband were straining to keep your marriage together. Your husband was drinking too much. There was the incident of the broken arm, the ominous quiet between you. Ominous quiet, yes. That phrase was the real thing anyway. The stiff, tense meals, where the only conversation had been, please pass the butter, Danny. Or, Danny, eat the rest of your carrots, or may I be excused, please. The nights when Jack was gone and she had laid down dry-eyed, on the couch while Danny watched TV. The mornings when she and Jack had stalked around each other like two angry cats with a quivering, frightening mouse between them. It all rang true. Dear God, do old scars ever stop hurting? No. Horribly, horribly true. Edmonds resumed. But things have changed. You know, schizoid behavior is a pretty common thing in children. It's accepted because all we adults have this unspoken agreement that children are lunatics. They have invisible friends. They They may go out and sit in the closet when they're depressed, withdrawing from the world. They attach talismanic importance to a special blanket or a teddy bear or a stuffed tiger. They suck their thumbs. When an adult sees things that aren't there, we consider them ready for the rubber room. When a child says he's seen a troll in his bedroom or a vampire outside the window, we simply smile indulgently. We have one sentence explanation that explains the whole range of such phenomena in children. He'll grow out of it, Jack said. And right there, I'm going to stop at 150. I'm going to stop this video. This is going to be part 1 of chapter 17. And then I'm going to move locations, plug up my computer, and continue. Give me just a second. Oh,